Thanks for checking out this review video. So this is for the 2021 anthology film Horror Noire. It's a Shudder original and it's coming to Shudder on Thursday, October 28th. So there will be no spoilers in this review for that reason. I will be evaluating and giving a star rating to each individual story within the film, which is 6. So this may get a little bit long, but there will be no spoilers. I'm not really going to give much of a synopsis. I might not even give any synopsis for the stories. They are relatively short because they're, anthology films. So I don't want to spoil too much about it. But I will say this is worth watching. And as I go over it, story by story, you will figure out which ones you're going to be most interested in, most likely, and which ones you may not. But anyway, this is real quick. This is kind of a follow-up to the Horror Noire documentary that came out on Shudder, I think a few years ago now, maybe 2-ish. If you have not seen that, it is still on Shudder. You should definitely check it out. It's about Black horror history, basically, and it's very fascinating. It's very good. A lot of awesome speakers in that one, and just as a documentary, it's really well put together. As a white person, it was very eye-opening in a lot of ways as to the relationship that people who are Black have with horror and have had with the horror industry. So, yeah, definitely very eye-opening and important film. So check it out. So this is kind of the follow-up. So this is like Black-written, Black-directed anthology film. So let's get into it. It is a bit over 2.5 hours, and I will say that whenever I see a runtime like that, I'm kind of like, oh, God, I don't know. But for something with an anthology, it's usually a little bit different because each individual story is still getting a relatively small amount of time. That said, I still do think overall there's a lot that could have been cut down from story to story, although I think there's one story in particular, the very last one, that I don't think needed any cut from because I think it was pretty tight the way it was and entertaining. But I think other than that, almost all the other ones probably could have used some editing down. Just saying. So the first film, or the first story, is called The Lake. This was directed by Joe West and written by the writing duo of Stephen Barnes and Tananarive Due, which, by the way, I had said her name as Tananarive Due in my Behind the Monsters review, and I apologize for that. I found out since it is Tananarive, not Tananarive Due. So my apologies on that one. Now, Barnes and Due had actually written an episode of the newer Twilight Zone, and Barnes had actually written some episodes for the old Twilight Zone as well as, randomly, episodes of the show Baywatch. He had other things he wrote too, but those were just some things that I wanted to mention because they kind of stood out. So for The Lake, there's a pretty consistent sound that they end up using in this that works very, very well for the physical environment, but also adding to the overall atmosphere of the actual story. It's a beautiful setting. It's a beautiful location. I like that it's set there because it's something a bit different. And what they're playing with story-wise is kind of like, it's some lore that people are very aware of, but it doesn't get used much or enough, in my opinion, when it comes to horror. So I like that they kind of mind something a little lesser used. I'm always a fan of that type of stuff because it makes things a little bit more fresh. And to the noise, you'll know what I'm talking about with the noise. It's pretty persistent throughout the film, but it really helps with giving a little bit of an unsettled feeling, but also adding just to the overall, like, this is the physical location we're at, and this is how it may sound. There's definitely a moment people may yell at their screen because a main character does something that's very much ill-advised, and I myself felt myself being like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But that's a good thing to feel because that means you're getting invested in the character, invested in the story. So I like that. Good acting in this, and I will say for the most part, there is a lot of good acting throughout all these stories. The best acting comes in the very final story, but I'll talk more about that when I get to that one. There are some interesting perspective shots in this one, showing some interesting directing and cinematography on this one. It looked quite good from a technical standpoint. It was well done. The story feels kind of gross in a real-life way. And this aspect ends up spiraling kind of downward at the same time that the fictional horror aspect is spiraling as well. I like when stories kind of do that. They kind of have, it's kind of like dual purpose. You have two things that are horrific in different ways happening at the same time, and they're spiraling down the drain at the exact same time. So it works well in that sense. The story is good, but the ending does leave you kind of wanting more. It falls a little bit flat in the end. I was just kind of like, oh, that's the ending. That's it. Kind of wanted it to go a little bit bigger. Kind of wanted it to be a little more fleshed out, because it could have been edited down, or that extra time could have been filled out with some other things, some more interesting things. Particularly, there's a little bit more backstory wise to the main character that gets hinted at, that I understand why they kind of left it vague, but I think they could have gone a little bit further down that road and it would have been interesting. But regardless, I did enjoy it. And with 5 stars possible, half stars in play, I'm going to give it a solid 3-star rating for The Lake. That leads me to the second one, Brand of Evil. This one's directed by Julien Christian Lutz, and it was written by Ezra C. Daniels. And by the way, Ezra C. Daniels had done some writing on the show Doom Patrol, so you might be familiar with his work there. There's some real condescending stuff that's said in this that'll make your eyes roll in the beginning, but it's from the standpoint of like you experiencing it from within the story, not like as an audience member being like, oh god, this dialogue's bad, or it's condescending towards the audience. It's condescending between characters, and it makes your eyes roll for the main character, basically. So for that reason, it's well written. That's what I'm kind of getting at, because the characters feel real. You kind of connect with them, and when these certain things are said, you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel offended for the character. So it speaks to the nice writing with this one. Good acting from the more important characters. Some of the acting for the more peripheral characters in this one, but quite good acting for all the characters that are more in the forefront. There's a tough situation that happens in this, and you really do feel it along with the main character, which then goes back to the writing being very good and this feeling like real life situation mixed with some fictional horror that shows up to it. The evil in this is kind of laughable design wise. The way it's executed design wise, there's some CGI that doesn't look so hot in this. And that's unfortunate because the point behind it is extremely strong. The idea behind it is extremely strong. It's just the execution is not great. And for that reason, it looks kind of laughable. And like I said, the CGI is not that good. Now, I think that this is a little bit of a theme throughout all the stories where I kind of feel like they were really constrained by budget. It seems like it was too low budget for what they were going for. And I really would have liked to see Shudder and AMC give them more money to get to to be able to go bigger and be able to go better. Because one of the big things that I took a note on for overall, I want to see more practical effects, I want to see more gore, and I wanted to see the ones that they had look better, be bigger, be more interesting. And I really just feel like they did what they could, but they were very much constrained by budget. And if you watch this, I think you'll kind of feel that as well. So give them more money if there's a second one, and I would watch the second one. There's a real point here about forgetting yourself and where you come from. So just know that. I didn't kind of get to any sort of theme in the first one because I felt like it would reveal too much. With this one, I can be vague enough, but if you've already seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, forgetting yourself and forgetting where you come from. This one I quite liked. Out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I'm giving it 3.5 stars, which is a good rating for me. Quite a good rating. The next one was called Bride Before You. Now, this one was directed by Zandashe Brown. Hopefully I got that name right. And written by Shernold Edwards, who has also written some things such as Instant Star, Haven, Da Kink in My Hair, and some of the Sleepy Hollow TV series, which I haven't seen, but I have been wanting to check out. So for this one, there's narration in the story. Now, narration can go a few different ways. Sometimes it's really bad for the story. Sometimes it's really good for the story. I think it really works for this particular story. So I was pleasantly surprised because A, not many people do narration, and B, like I said, sometimes it can be kind of a disaster. Plus, the actress doing the voicing for it did a really good job, in my opinion. This is also a period story, which works very well for the story itself being told. especially with the kind of heart of what they're trying to go for from a societal commentary type thing. So that time period works really well. But I'm saying this about the time period because I know there's some people who don't really get into period piece stuff, and horror period piece wise is pretty uncommon for the most part. But when it's done well, it's well, and then this one's fine. I felt kind of conflicted on it, and that'll be reflected in my star rating. Once again, the acting is quite good in this one. The pacing is not that great. This is one of those ones that I think could have been edited down more than some of the other ones. It seemed to kind of stretch on too long. There wasn't that much interesting stuff going on. It kind of felt like it kept kind of trying to repeat the same point over and over again a little too much. So, yeah, the pacing's not the best in this one. Also, the kills are super lame. The kills are really bad, and there's something cool practical effects wise that shows up at the end, but they keep it in the dark for the most part. You see it like kind of, and my feeling on that is it probably didn't look that great because of budgetary issues. They weren't able to make it look as great as they wanted to, so they kind of kept it in the dark to just give you the idea of what was there and give you enough to get that idea through, but not see enough that you're satisfied. So yeah, with lame kills and not great practical effects and the pacing issues, this wasn't the best for me. It is a solid story, but I just think the execution ended up being kind of flat for the reasons that I laid out, which some of it's budgetary, unfortunately, I feel. This one plays at issues of trying to distance yourself from your heritage, the kind of issues that go along with doing it and not doing it, basically. So, out of 5 stars, I'm giving this 2.5 stars. I felt very conflicted because there were things I really did like, but things I really didn't like, so it was smack in the middle for me. So the next story is called Fugue State. Now, this one is directed by Rob Greenlea and written again by Stephen Barnes and Tananarive Due. Rachel True is in this one. People would know her best from The Craft, potentially from the horror realm. Malcolm Barrett is also in this. People may know him best from Preacher. And there's someone else in it who I'm not going to say who it is because I'll leave that up to being a surprise. But people will be very happy to hear the person's voice and then see the person, because that's how you hear the voice first and then you see it. But I think that people will pick up on who it is before they actually see him, but I'm not going to go too far. Now, I will say that True and Barrett's chemistry is really good on screen. I really like that most about this film. Also, the little bits of humor that get kind of sprinkled throughout this one, I enjoy. And yeah, obviously the acting's good. I will say in particular that Malcolm Barrett did a phenomenal job in this particular story. I think overall the acting is good, but I think Barrett kind of stood out as being that next level. So he did very well. And his role, too, was more demanding. So I really appreciated what he did here. There's a bit of humor. Like I said, I did enjoy the humor. The pacing is a little bit off, though. Actually, the pacing is more than a little bit off. It's another one of those issues like the last one I was talking about where you feel like they're hitting the same point kind of repeatedly, and it's like, okay, we don't need it, like we got the point already. They're just kind of like trying to drive it home too much, which just stretches out the runtime, which just kind of waters down the impact of the actual story, in my opinion. You get the point of what's going on pretty early, and the fact that they just keep trying to like hammer that same thing, it feels like they're just stuck and not pushing the story forward. They're just kind of like spinning wheels, unfortunately. Eventually they get there, but it just takes too long. The evil in this one is another one that's laughable. That's very laughable. I mean, the evil itself, but part of the manifestation of the evil is what's really laughable. I saw that and I was like, that's bad. Especially because there are other ways that it could have been pulled off. Like, I get the point behind it. I really do. And it's fine. I'm totally good with the point, and it's smart, but the execution of it just doesn't look good. It doesn't come off that great. It could have been done in a different way and should have been done in a different way, in my opinion. The ending is fine, but it took way too long to get there. And this one deals with how people can change for certain outside reasons and what that can end up doing to relationships. Obviously not in a good way because it's horror. Now, unfortunately, out of 5 stars, I'm giving this 1.5 stars. This was my least favorite of all of them for that reason. Well, for all the reasons I laid out. So the next one was called Daddy. This was directed by Robin Givens. I believe the actress, Robin Givens. Really good directing in this one, by the way. It did stand out. Very, not just more than competent from a director standpoint, but very artistic at times. Some really interesting shot composition in this one. And the use of lighting. There's some very interesting use of lighting in this. Anyway, the writer for this one is Victor LaValle, who also wrote The Ballad of Black Tom, which I've not seen, but would be open to watching. There is a little bit of ADR problem in the beginning of this. Actually, one character in particular, I think what it seems like, I don't know if this is true or not, that they got someone else to voice this person over after the fact. That's what it plays like. And the ADR looks like it's off. So that kind of bothers me. But other than that, it's just this one character. That one character is in it enough that the ADR issues will bother you, but is not in it enough that it will destroy the story for you. So, you know. Solid acting, but a big, big, big shout out to Miles McNichol. He did a phenomenal job for how young he is. Real little kid, killed it. When you consider how young that kid is and what his performance was, wow. I was pretty astounded. That kid could be someone to watch for the future if he keeps getting work, and I really hope he does. The weaving together of the real-life fears and fictional horror in this are done pretty well, in my opinion. It's that thing that I was talking about before in the first one, where it's like a real-life issue versus the fictional horror, kind of like at the same time spiraling down. Done quite well here. Once again, the lighting. The lighting is very interesting in this, and that goes along really well with the cinematography and the direction. This plays at the fears of fatherhood and how you can end up losing yourself. And I won't go any further than that, but that's not really a spoiler about fears of fatherhood, because it's literally called Daddy, so you would get that idea. So this is another one that I enjoyed. Out of 5 stars, 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. And then we come to the final one, which was my favorite, and this one is called Sundown. Directed by Kimani Ray Smith and written by Letson. There is some good humor in this one. There is a consistent amount of humor. I mean, it is funny from the beginning to the end. Letson knows how to write humorous stuff. I couldn't find anything previous that Letson had written, but maybe this is the beginning of a career in writing, because I really enjoyed the script writing on this one. The characters' dialogue was great. Their interactions with each other, their relationships, it all felt real and entertaining at the same time, and I really did enjoy it. Letson, you did a good job. The humor, like I said, the humor is good, and it's sprinkled throughout in a good portioning, I guess is the best way to put it. There's a statement that comes up a few times that is at the core of the point of the story. I don't want to say what it is, because it would tip the hat way too much with what's really going on with this, but there's a statement that's done a few times, so keep your ears open for that, and you'll understand what's at the core of this story, what they're really trying to get to. But it's not too hard to figure out either. But it's also not like beating you over the head, so it walks a good line. Real good acting in this one as well. Shout outs to Erica Ashe, Tone Bell, and LaValle Crawford. You three in particular did excellent jobs. I love seeing LaValle Crawford in anything. I've actually been a fan of LaValle Crawford's ever since he was on the show Last Comic Standing in one of the first few seasons. This is some time ago, people. But people may best know him from his role as Yule in Better Call Saul. But he's good in everything. He's super funny. He was also in Hubie Halloween, which actually is not a bad film. I kind of enjoy it. And he's hilarious in that. He's hilarious in everything. And he is super freaking hilarious in Sundown. There is good evil in this one, and a very nice reveal of what the evil is. They do a really good job of kind of hooking your interest early. And then once they get to the reveal, you're like, oh yes. Not only do you like the reveal of the evil and what the evil is, but the implications of where things are headed. And you're like, here we go. Let's kick this off. and then it goes from being interesting and fun to being like super entertaining and even more fun. Great pacing and really fun ending. I honestly think this is one that could have been longer, and you would be totally fine with that. I honestly think this should be a feature-length film. Please take this and make it a feature-length. Let Letson finish that script out. Let's get a full story, because this is super entertaining, and I want this. This could be an awesome, awesome horror comedy, which, as most people know, there aren't nearly enough horror comedies these days. And some of the ones that come out are, it's really kind of hard to get that nice mix of horror and comedy. And I feel like Letson really captured that. And the directing, obviously, of Smith. Kimani Ray Smith did a really good job, because his directing style is really fun, which did a good job in matching the tone of the script. So it was just overall fun. Like, so many things came together so well in this one. I really enjoy it. So out of 5 stars with half stars, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm giving it a very solid 4-star rating. I thought about going to 4.5, but I don't think it's quite there. But a really solid 4-star rating, which, if people have been watching my channel, I don't give those out lightly. 4s are hard to get, so this is a good one. Once again, it stands to reiterate at the very end. Overall, I do wish they went a lot bigger on the practical effects and the gore, but like I said, I think this is a budgetary problem. So AMC and Shudder, if we're going to do another one of these, and I'm down for that, more money. I understand I may be asking for an increased price in my subscription monthly, but like $1, it's okay. And then we can give that money to the artists. Let's do this. Overall, as like a full film, it's like 3.17 stars if I average it all out. So a little bit over 3 stars, so definitely worth watching. There isn't any like wraparound story or anything like that, like some anthologies try to do, but I'm totally good with that, because honestly, the majority of the time, those wraparound stories aren't that great. The only one I can think of off the top of my head that had a really good wraparound story was really Scare Package, which is also on Shudder, and I would recommend watching it. A great anthology. So yeah, but this is a good one. I highly recommend it. So I would love to hear from you all. When you have seen it, go ahead and put some comments down there, and we can talk spoilers in the comments. What ones did you like most? What ones didn't you like? I'm sure people are going to differ. Like, ones that I said I didn't like as much, people will be like, I loved them, and vice versa. So always like hearing different opinions on this stuff. So go ahead and comment. Also, do me a quick favor and subscribe if you have not already. I would really, really, really appreciate that. Quick, painless, costs you $0, and it helps keep me motivated to keep doing these reviews so people can consume them. So please consider that. But regardless, I really thank you for taking your time to watch this. And until next time, keep it brutal.